Okay, we're continuing in Sefer Shoftim, and we're on Perek Aleph Pasuk Gimel. We're in the middle of that, so let's just go that over. Vayomer Yehuda l'Shimon Achiv, and Yehuda, who Hashem has designated as the one to be the first one to fight and do the mop-up operations against the Canaanim. So Vayomer Yehuda l'Shimon Achiv, and Yehuda says to Shimon his brother, Alei iti begorali, come up with me in my portion and in my destiny, and let us fight the Canaani, and I will also go in your portion and your destiny. Shimon, and Shimon went with him. So we brought down from Rav Tzadok yesterday the idea how Shimon is really the one who has the tremendous capacity to listen, but that capacity is one that is not overtly obvious. It's not that clear. It's something that's deep inside. I want to read just a little bit from Rav Tzadok, and if anybody wants copies of what I have, I can give it to you later. He says the main root of Shimon is the opposite of the ultimate of separation from the nations, and therefore he's included in Yehuda, who is also the ultimate in the separation of nations, because that's why Jews are called Yehudim. Yehudim are called Jews because the Gemara Megillah says anyone who denies idolatry is called a Yehudi. So obviously that's why Yehuda, he represents everything against idolatry. As we said, his name has the name of Hashem. And Shimon even represents a deeper type of separation, which will only be revealed in the days of Mashiach, when the pasuk says Hashem alone will lead us, and there'll be no other foreign gods around. So therefore, that's why he explains he was the most jealous about what happened with Dinah, and he killed out the city of Shechem, and he worked together with Levi. And Levi, of course, is totally separated from everything, because Levi's already separated from even all the Jewish people. Levi is different than anybody. He's even, not only is he different from non-Jews, he's different than Jews. The Kohanim and the Levim, they don't have a portion. They have a whole different lifestyle. They're much more spiritually bent. So they're like really far away. On the other hand, Shimon, on the other hand, he says, he's like one of the tribes. And his level is Sheyesh B'Shorish Kedushas Kol Yisrael, which is really in the root of all the holiness of all the Jewish people, that really the Jewish people should be totally separated, totally without any connection to something that's foreign to Yiddishkeit. That's really the deepest aspect of Shimon, which really is the deepest aspect of the Jewish people, is we should have nothing to do with the non-Jews of the world. Nothing to do with them. But he says, but this is not revealed in this world. That potential is not revealed in this world. Why? Because he says in terms of this world, he says it appears it would appear that all the Jews could mingle amongst the non-Jews and be connected with them. That's what it looks like. Unfortunately, we see that. Jews, remember we mentioned once from a Pincus, if you recall, that Jews really don't have, there are 70 nations in the world. 70 nations. But it's not 71. 70 and not 71. But the 70 are all the non-Jews. And then you have the Jews. But they're not the Shivim Ha'amim. They're not considered 70 nations. It's 70 nations plus the Jews. We're not the 71st. So what does that mean? So he explained beautifully that when we're in next week's Parsha, when Hashem causes the Dor HaFlaga, the dispersal, that every nation at the time of the Tower of Babel was dispersed. Everyone, God put the nature into every nation to have a certain type of nature. However you want to define it, you want to say the French have more amour, Amur, how do you pronounce it? Right? Amur. Like that's their nature. And every nation has a certain nature that's part of who they are. The Jewish people do not have any nature. We don't have any nature. The only nature we have is we are like the moon. We're like no. We're like the moon. We're like the moon, which only reflects. Now, because of that, we are the only ones able to reflect godliness in the world. To be able to reflect Hashem is not an easy thing. The midos of Hashem are extremely thorough and deep. And, lo sechem l'chol goy. The non-Jews can't. They can't do it. It's not in their neshama. They don't have the neshama they don't have the demus Elokim. They're not capable of having chesed the way we're having chesed, to be the balei chesed. We have that special gift to reflect, and therefore the Rachmanos were Rachmanim by Shonim going lechasadim from Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. That's only because they could reflect Hashem's attributes. So therefore, we are the ones. We don't have. This is our nature. We don't have a built-in nature. We only have one thing. We can reflect Hashem. We're a mirror of Hashem. We have that ability to bring it out. All we have is from what we get from Hashem. It's a very beautiful thing, but it's a double-edged sword. Because what happens when we mix amongst Goyim, then we have a tremendous ability to reflect them more than anyone else. The Jews are always the best, the most loyal countrymen. If they mess up, they become the best Spaniards and the best Germans and the best of everything. And that's what Reb Tzadok is saying over here. He says, it looks like on the surface, it looks like we're able to join with them and commingle with them. He says, but Shimon really is from the root of the power to be totally separated. Why? Because he has a unique power to hear everything that Hashem says to him. Because remember, his name is Shimon. Shema. To listen. Shema, to listen. The Iker Shmiya, what is the main meaning of the word Shmiya, to listen? Lashon Kabbalah, which means to accept. Lishma really means to accept, to be able to hear, and I talked about this on Rosh Hashanah, I believe, right? Lishma kol shofar, to accept what's coming out of there. And that's what the Targum says many times. The Aramaic Targum on the word Shmiya, remember the word Shmiya, will translate as Kabbalah Stvorim, as accepting words. Why? He says, Ki ha'ozen osui. Look at the way your ear is made. It's made kikli kibul. It's made as a receptacle. Right? Why isn't there just a little hole? If you think about it, why is there just a little hole? Put a hole in your head. Because really that's what it is, isn't it? Isn't it a hole into the head? So, I mean, I'm sure there's many medical reasons why Hashem made it exactly this way. But one thing is, it is like a receptacle. It's meant to receive what Hashem is saying, right? And that's to accept from what others tell them. So now, what's the beauty of Shimon? So if you only want to receive that which Hashem wants you to receive, and which Hashem gives this flow, and how he influences you, then you're totally separated from all the non-Jews. In other words, Shimon has a tremendous power to accept what others tell him, and therefore who's the one who has the most power to accept more than anyone else what Hashem tells him is Shimon. He has that tremendous power to soak in everything that's being said. However, the problem is, when we live in a world, see, but that's what the Pasuk says, when Mashiach comes, then, only then will Hashem alone lead us, and there'll be no other foreign gods. But if there are other leaders, then Shimon picks up from everybody. That's the problem. Shimon does not yet is able to discriminate between what to listen to. In other words, the ability to be a mushpa, to be influenced. We talked about this from Rav Kook in the Book of Judges Shoftim Isha, and Shasani Kirtzono. The women have this ability to be mushpa, right? So Shimon has a tremendous ability to accept what others are telling them, and to such a great extent, Rav Tzadok says, he doesn't have the other ability to be mashpia, to influence others. He's so into the listening and the acceptance, he doesn't have within himself to influence others, as opposed to, let's say, Yehuda. Yehuda, of course, can accept also, but he also is one who can influence. So now, this explains a very interesting thing. As we'll go through Sefer Shoftim, you will notice that the tribe of Shimon never had a shofet from their tribe. Because in order to be a shofet, you'd have to be able to influence others. And therefore he's not able to do this. So, therefore, the only reason Shimon has this challenge is because in this world there's many people who are influencers. There's many influencers, all kinds of types of influence, and therefore Shimon has the challenge to be able to his challenge is not to listen to everything. Like we've said many times. As we said yesterday, and as we'll explain again, whatever your koach is, whatever your power is, your strength is, you will have to work it through to develop it properly. So you can imagine Shimon has the best ability to be influenced. Now, if you're influenced from Hashem, that's unbelievable. It means you're going to come closer to Hashem than anybody else. You'll be able, whatever Hashem says, you're going to do it, while others may have problems dealing with it. But the problem is there's a lot of influencers out there. The role of Shimon, his avoda, is to learn when not to listen. That's the way it is in every way in life. If you're strong in chesed, you have to know when not to have chesed. That's when you're tested in the midah. So yes, how do we know you're good at a certain midah? Rav Hutner says, well, how do you know if you're good in a midah? When you know not to display the midah. If naturally you have a certain predisposition, it's a good predisposition, but there's no such thing as if you do it all the time, it's going to be good. Right? That was the whole thing with Avram. If he was predisposed to be kind, good. But was it his decision to be kind, or was the kindness that was the decision to be kind? Was it his nature to be kind that dictates, or his discriminating understanding of when to be kind? In other words, has the midah acquired you, or have you acquired the midah? It's a big difference. That's a challenge for everybody in life. A lot of times say, oh, he's such a tzaddik, he does this, he does that, but that doesn't mean anything. He has to be able to show when he doesn't show it. That's the problem. At funerals, we say what they do, but sometimes the bigger thing is to say what they didn't do to show that they really owned the midah. Do you understand what I'm saying? The guy was so kind, he did this and that. It may not even be a praise, because he may have been never able to say no to people he should have said no to, and he may have caused a lot of harm in his life because he never knew how to say no. Real would say, and as much as he wanted to do this, he said no, because his nature was to be kind. He said no. That really should be the praise, but we don't do that. Yeah, if to really know, that's why people who give eulogies really have to be clever, to know Torah, and to be able to know the people well. But that's always the challenge. That's why Aaron's 10 tests, every test was to not be kind. Then I know you're really kind. Right? So that's Shimon's test. He has the ability to hear. So the test is, so when are you going to not hear? So when it's idolatry, you have to not listen to it. So now you can understand the problem. So when, for example, Shechem violated Dinah, so he heard it more than any one of the other brothers. He understood this is a tremendous chutzpah. This is a tremendous insult to the house of Yaakov. No, this thing cannot exist. Right? Now, for Levi to do it, it's not such a wondrous thing. Because Levi is built in separate from everybody. His destiny is separate. He's a Kohen, he's a Levi, doesn't have a portion of land. He knows he's a different guy. So Hashem, and Levi has his own challenge. And it's, hopefully, we'll be able to explain all the Shvatim and understand what's the root of every Shevet to understand what their challenge was in life. But for Levi, of course, he would be the one that, and you see throughout Jewish history, Levi's always the one. Whenever by the sin of the golden calf, Moshe says, "Who's going to come and kill their brothers who are worshiping idols?" Levi's right there without any problem, because he already is separate from everybody. Shimon's greatness is he commingles with everybody. He's part of the whole gang. And what his greatness is supposed to be is, I'm like everybody else, but I am going to listen only to Hashem. Right? So when it came time to help Dinah, it was very good. But then when it came time when the Moabite and Midianite women were seducing the men, who falls? Shimon falls. Because he didn't work through the Midah properly, and therefore they listened to the women too. They go, okay, you want me to worship idols? I'll worship idols too. And of course, there was all philosophy. It wasn't so pashut. It's the time for the tikkun, and we have to get the non-Jews involved, etc. All kinds of philosophies. But that become their undoing. So what happens when it's going to come the times of Mashiach and Olam Haba, where the description is that Hashem's in the middle and everybody's around him like a circle listening to the Torah? Then Shimon's greatness will come out in the greatest way, because then there's nobody else influencing. Because we're all in the circle, nobody's an influencer, we're the ones who have to receive this, and therefore he will be a listener better than anybody else. So obviously you can understand now why Yehuda is the one who is selected number one, because Yehuda is the one who represents the antithesis of idolatry, and that's really what's going on over here. We'll see that idolatry is the means to then allow immorality. So Yehuda will be against that. But who's the one who could hear the message as well if he has help? You understand why he needs help? Yehuda says, come with me, I'm strong, and I'll get you to hear it properly. So therefore Shimon, who now has a voice to listen to, and that's what we said was the pasuk, Shema Yehuda Kol Hashem, which really means Shimon is going to listen to the call of Hashem via Yehuda. Right? Yehuda is the strong king who he will be one day, and Shimon will listen to him. So Shimon makes his business to listen to the strong voice of Yehuda, which is echoing the voice of Hashem. Then Shimon will take on the message more so than everybody else. So that is the challenge of Shimon, and that becomes the understanding of Shimon. And that's why even when in Parshas Vayetze, when it talks about the naming of the children, and Leah names the first child Reuven and the second one Shimon, right? So it says, Hashem saw my pain, and that's for Reuven, and Hashem heard I was hated, that's for Shimon. So obvious question is, that's very academic. I mean, why didn't it just say Hashem heard? Why wasn't the first kid called Shimon? Hashem heard I was afflicted, and the second one Reuven, and saw that I was hated. In other words, the name is that name. But why is the first one called Reuven and the second one Shimon? The first one could have called Shimon, the second one called Reuven. She could have said Shama Hashem. Hashem heard that I was afflicted. And then the second one, Hashem saw that I was the hated one. Do you understand the question? I mean, it seems like it's so just random. Because it could. So what does the Malbim explain? Malbim explains that by Reuven, when Reuven was born, Leah just thought she wasn't loved as much. He understood that Yaakov loved Rachel more, so she wasn't loved as much. So that was a source of pain for her. So that's what she saw. But as we understand now, but Shmiya, listening, means to really accept what's going on and to really understand deeper. So once she has the first kid, Reuven, and she sees, you know what? She figures, now that I have the first kid, he's going to love me more because I've given him a man-child, which is very important. So now he'll love me more. And then after the first child, she sees he doesn't love me more. Then she really understands that really I was hated. As we explained according to the Ramban, I don't want to go there. But now she understood that she was hated. And therefore it's Shama. Hashem heard. And when I had the second kid, Hashem, why did Hashem give me the second kid? Because he knew he heard and understood that I was hated, and therefore he gave me another child. So you see, in the name Shimon, in the beginning, Reuben, I didn't accept it all. I couldn't accept the fact that my husband didn't like. I wasn't hearing it. You understand? I was just seeing it. Reuben, I was seeing it, which was more superficial. But now I'm getting the message. And if I got the message, then obviously Hashem all the time had the message. Hashem heard, and that becomes the koach of Shimon, to be able to hear more than what other people are hearing. It's a fascinating understanding of what Shimon brings to the table over here. So you can understand why Hashem mercifully did not have Shimon have his own portion. If he had his own portion, then he's alone, and he's got to deal with the Canaanim, and he's going to be hearing the Canaanim. If he's within Yehuda's portion, and Yehuda is one of the strongest tribes in terms of expressing the proper belief in Hashem, he needs to hear that, right? So therefore Hashem isn't, he's helping Shimon, and that's why you notice that, as much as Shimon didn't get a bracha from Moshe, but the truth is Hashem doesn't point out his flaws so badly either, because deep, it really is, he's an amazing potential. He's got an amazing potential over there. So now we could appreciate why Shimon is totally within Yehuda. Okay, so let's continue. Pasuk Daled, moving ahead now. Vaya'al Yehuda vayitain Hashem es haknani v'aprizi biyodom. Yehuda now went up to battle, and Hashem gave into his hands in victory the Canaanites and the Prizi. So who are these Prizi? Now it started off in Pasuk Aleph. The question is, who's going to fight against the Canaani? So I guess there's 7 Canaanite nations, right? So we got the Prizi is also another one. Now the word Prizi again is very interesting. Prizi comes from the word lahafriz. What does lahafriz mean? To spread out, which is again the expression of hispashtus. Expansiveness into areas where you shouldn't be expanding. So you see again the name is reflecting the nature of the Canaanites. Vayakum bebezek, and they hit them, they destroyed them in a place called Bezek. Aseres alofim ish, 10,000 people. That's a big number. It means it's a big hit they gave. Now again, the word Bezek is every word is important here. Bezek is very instructive. What's the root meaning word Bezek? So there's a Mishnah Eruvin. It talks about when the ramp in the to the Mizbeach was slippery. The expression that's used over there is boskin. They spread salt on the Mizbeach to make it less slippery. So Bezek also means spreading. So they hit them in Bezek, where the ideology of spreading out, loving everybody, they hit that ideology in Bezek. Now also in Shmuel Aleph, Perek Yud Aleph, there's a reference made to there was a lottery made over there, and they said it was made out of Bezek. And over there the word Bezek means kli cheres, earthenware material. So the word Bezek can also mean earthenware material. So now let's think about this. Why does the word Bezek have one meaning of the ability to spread out, and also means earthenware material? The answer is, what do you know about earthenware material that's Thu May, that becomes ritually impure? How do you fix it? You can't. There's only one way to fix it. You got to break it. So you understand what's going on over there. There's no tikkun. There's no correction for earthenware unless you break it. So the point that's being made over here, very subtly, the Navi is saying, is that the chesed of Canaan is beyond repair. The Canaanites are beyond repair. They're so into this loose lifestyle, this spread out lifestyle, it's beyond repair, like a kli cheres, like an earthenware material. So now you can understand why there's a mitzvah to destroy the 7 Canaanite nations. You have to destroy them because notice, they're so earthen themselves. Remember, the human being comes from the ground physically, but the neshama, even a goy has a certain level of neshama. But if they became like earthenware utensils, where they totally got into the earthly part and spreading out into the immoral part of the earthliness of themselves. So they got to such a point where they were earthen utensils that had spread out, that were beyond repair. And therefore the only solution is to break them. You have to kill them, which is interesting, as opposed to, for example, Amalek. As bad as Amalek is, they're not from the 7 nations. And there's a mitzvah to try to be Makarev Amalek. You don't have to kill them if they want to convert to Yiddishkeit and they want to see a better way of life. You don't have to kill them.
Really?
They're not beyond repair. Interesting. Canaanites are beyond repair. Amalek it's a whole different attitude. Kanani, it's all being a behemoth, being an animal. You know, somebody to talk to. You can't start talking to them and explaining to them. You can't. You can only smash them. That's all. That's the only eitzah. I know it's not politically correct, right? What the UN would have said about Yeshua and the Jewish people. Can you imagine? We know what they said. All the UN was there. The UN was there in Yericho. They all want to kill us. Sometimes I don't care what you want. Yeshua's going to kill all of you, right? But there's something you can do with these people. Right?
Is this how we get the name Bezek for the phone company?
Yeah. Spread out.
Yeah, I guess that's what it is. It spreads out.
Spread out.
Hopefully in a good way.
Networking.
Right.
Russian hair on the phones.
Well, that could be also. Okay. So it's interesting. So there is a hint to the idea of earthenware here. And you'll notice when we come to the end of the parak, I'll make note of it then, we see that when the Jews aren't doing so well, there's a reference to a place called Har Cheres, the mountain of earthenware, that shows you that it's interesting. The beginning, right in the beginning, the first place is Bezek. It's earthenware where it's looking good, but unfortunately, very soon we're going to see the Jews slack off, and then they allow the Canaanites to live there, and then it comes back to the Har Cheres, the mountain of earthenware, where they allow them to stay. But we'll get there. We'll see that. Okay, Pasuk Hey. Now, who do they find in this battle? Vayimtzu es Adoni Bezek bebezek. So now they find the king, whose name is Adoni Bezek. Adon means a master, the master of Bezek. Which obviously, what kind of guy do you think he is? If he's called the master of Bezek, he's the master of Hispashtut, of spreading out. He must be the lowest of the low, and he must be the biggest kli cheres around, the biggest earthenware around. So there's a big inyan to get to this guy. Vayilechamu bo, and they fought against him. So the Malbim talks about, because then it says vayakum. It says vayaku es haknani saprisi. Now that seems to be a repetition. It says, and they hit the Kanani and the Prisi. Well, didn't it just say it in Pasuk Daled? It says they went to fight against the Kanani and the Prisi, and they hit them in Bezek, 10,000 people. Then it says, and then they found the king, and they found him, and then they hit again the Kanani and the Prisi. So the Malbim talks about this, and he says that the first battle was out in the fields, was outside of Bezek, was the surrounding metro, what do you call it, the GTB, the great GBA, the Greater Bezek area, right? The GBA, right? So in the suburbs, whatever, where they start the battle. So that was number one. Now, of course, the non-Jewish kings are not necessarily the bravest. So the king, he ain't leading out the troops. He's sitting in the city. Once they knocked out what's going on the outside, then they go into the city to conquer the city itself. That's where they encounter Adoni Bezek, who remains there, and he must have a lot of troops over there. And that becomes the second battle to destroy the Kanani and the Prisi over there. But again, the king always represents, he personifies the quality and the character of the nation. So like they word it, they fought against him, Vayilchamu bo. They fought against him. You need so many soldiers to fight against one guy, but again, it's the ideology that they have to fight against. And in this war, they did fine. Pasuk Vav continues, Adoni Bezek's not doing well. Vayonas Adoni Bezek. Adoni Bezek flees from the city. Vayirdevu Achrav, they run after him, and now something very strange happens. So they get a hold of him. Now, if you don't read any more, so what did we know in the past? When they got these kings and they caught them, what did they do to them? They killed them.
Kill them right away.
Killed them with the sword. Here it seems a little bit of Guantanamo Bay. Vayikatzitzu es bahonos yada v'raglov. So they cut off his thumbs and his big toes. That's what they did to him. Now, why did they do this? This seems very unusual, why they would do such a thing. So it's going to be very clear when we do the next pasuk why they did this. Vayomer Adoni Bezek. So after he got his thumbs and toes chopped off, Adoni Bezek said, Shivim Melochim Bahonos Yedeim Vragleim Mekuchatzim Hoyu Malaktim Tacha Shulchani. There were 70 kings who I chopped off their thumbs and their toes, and they would sit under my table, my royal table, and I would feed them scraps. Okay? So now he reflected back and said, Kasher Asisi, just like I did, Kain Shilam Li Elokim. So did God pay me back. Vayiveyehu Yerushalayim, they brought him to Yerushalayim, Vayom Hasham, and he died there. So, very interesting. There's a lot to talk about over here. Let's start with the Malbim. It's so hard, I got to flip back to the front and the back to get to the Malbim. He said, now they're all wondering, this was very odd, why did the Jews do this? Now you got to know one thing, the Jews did not know that he had been chopping off 70 kings' thumbs and toes.
Really?
Big toes. They didn't know this.
How do you know? Did they know?
Because Malbim says so. Malbim says, he says, Kach nosan Hashem bedaitem lasasol. This is the idea Hashem put in their mind. In the Jewish rulers, they said, you know, this guy we're going to do different. We're going to chop off his thumbs. Right? They didn't do this to any one of their other enemies. Right? This is a bit different than the rules that the Jews are supposed to be playing with. Because what did Hashem say? That the killing of the 7 nations is with the sword. You're supposed to kill them. Torah says constantly, kill them by the edge of the sword. Not to torture them. Torture is not a Jewish concept. It's not a Jewish concept. Someone said, that's very odd. Why would they do that? So he says very simple. Hashem put it in their mind. Hashem put it in their mind. Now you know why Hashem put it in their mind. Right? So that Hashem could punish him measure for measure. So the Malbim is saying, in other words, sometimes leaders, they do things and they really can't explain why they're doing it. So the reason they're doing it is because Hashem indeed put it in their mind. So why do this? I don't know. Kacha Allah bilibi. That's what I felt like doing. For some reason I feel possessed to do this. Right? We'll see in a minute a little more explanation on this. Right? But so the Ralbag, he adds a little bit more. He says the reason they did it was to strike fear into the other kings. Because word will get out that the king was tortured. This will, that causes a lot of fear, and therefore they'll be afraid to fight against the Jews. And then there's other options. You can then surrender and be willing to be taxed and be subjugated to the Jews, which is always a lot easier than having to go to battle, right? He says even though Hashem caused this, that he should, and then he also alludes to the fact, and Hashem did this so he could bring out the Mida Keneged Mida, the measure for measure, which he himself was able to draw out of that. Adoni Bezek was able to realize that. Now, in the Parsha Specific Nevi'im, he adds another nice insight to this idea as well. Because we see now that Adoni Bezek says, just like I did, Hashem punished me. Now, maybe we should say the other thing first. Where else do you find in the Torah the idea of thumbs and big toes? Let's
when Moshe anointed the Aron and its...
Okay, in the Miluim, in the time when there was the induction of the Kohanim into the service in the Beis HaMikdash, so they sprinkled right?
The right thumb.
They sprinkled out to the right thumb and to the ears. That's one. That's one. Then there's another one. It's another one. Good. You got one of them. Now, for 100 now.
The purification of the Mitzorah.
The purification of the Mitzorah. They sprinkle
Same thing.
the water, right? It's sprinkle on, but there on the thumbs and on the big and on the big toes. So the Even Ezra over there by Tzaras, he mentions, and he writes like this. He says, "Habohen, the thumb, is makom hachibur. It's the place of attachment. Hu ikar kol hamasa. It's the main phalange, is that the right word? The main phalange for action. V'yaminus, and the right, because the right is the stronger one. In other words, the ability to grasp is enhanced. Can you imagine, God, why did God give us thumbs? I mean, wouldn't 4 fingers be good enough? No, the thumb is critical because that gives the ability to grasp.
It's against all the
it's hard to manage. Without a thumb, it just doesn't work that way. Even you have by the Kohen when he makes the mincha offering, he uses the thumb as the komets to take off the excess. So the thumb is very critical in terms of grasp. So what Adoni Bezek would do to the other kings, he wanted to show his superiority over all the other kings. So he'd cut off the enemy's toes and thumbs, in other words, to show I'm wiping away your power of grasp. And all you can get is under my table the scraps that I give you.
You probably have to eat like animals.
Right, eat like animals. So now here, so what's happening over here is the eradication of evil has to be symbolized as a total eradication, that we're wiping away the apex of all their ability to action, as if to say to the rest of the Canaanites, and remember, he had already conquered, he had 70 kings he had conquered, that's like the 70 nations. So really Adoni Bezek represented the evil of the entire world. I think it's just 70 random kings, it's like the 70 nations. So Adoni Bezek cuts off 70 thumbs because he wanted to take all their evil and incorporate it into himself and to be the head evil guy. And therefore, when they're fighting Adoni Bezek, they're really fighting he who represents the 70 nations. And therefore, what do we do then? So now we cut off his thumbs to show that all 70 are all cut, and you have no more grasp to do what you want to do. That's the symbolism there. So, now, one last point. I don't know if we can get this all in the next 2 minutes. But it is interesting. He was taken to Yerushalayim, and there he died, which symbolizes the power of Yerushalayim. And now, on the simple shot, why they took Yerushalayim? Because that became the next battle. We'll see in a minute, the next battle. So they took him along to the next battle. But perhaps in a deeper way, and we'll explain more tomorrow, in the Beis HaMikdash, we just finished the holiday of Sukkot. How many korbanos were brought on Sukkot? 70 korbanos corresponding to the 70 nations that was brought in Yerushalayim. So as we look for a tikkun of the world that really comes from Yerushalayim, so sort of symbolizing a tikkun for these 70 nations, that he should be brought and killed and buried in Yerushalayim.
Was he killed?
Yeah, he died. So he died there.
He died.
He died, but I didn't say he was killed.
Well, it could be he just died from the torture.
Because they didn't cut him. They let him.
Right, but we'll see.
The infection took him.
We'll see that there is more over here. Exactly what was going on over here. It's not time to start the next point. We'll see that there is a little bit more to this way they killed him and what he was able to achieve in his death. We'll continue with that tomorrow, Mirza Hashem.